X-T30 is Fujifilm's new mid-range offering for 2019. It offers a lot of features that can be found in X-T3, but in much smaller package and at significantly lower price. Combination of the new X-Trans4 APS-C sensor, small dimensions, and relatively affordable pricing make the X-T30 very attractive option for a lot of users. So in this video, we will take a look at the performance of the X-T30 and the main strengths and weaknesses of this camera. At this point, we don't really see many cameras released in this category. All of the manufacturers are focusing on high-end cameras that are usually at least twice the price of the X-T30. So I have to say that I am very happy to see the X-T30 on the market at all. My very first impression of the X-T30 was that it is tiny. I have never used X-T20, so looking at the specs, I was expecting something close to X-T3 size. There are some compromises that were made to achieve this packaging, but the size to performance ratio of this little camera is truly outstanding. Besides that, I also think that it looks great. I generally like all vintage looking Fuji cameras. I think that it gives this camera a lot of character, and besides the primary use, it is also a very nice fashion accessory for your street and travel photography. The build quality is also good. It is not quite as high as with the X-T3, but it feels solid. The materials are okay. It is not the most premium feeling camera that I've ever tested, but I don't think that anybody will complain about the build quality. It is not weather sealed, but that is okay in this category. Let's move on to probably the biggest strength of this camera, which is the sensor. It is the new X-Trans4 26.1 megapixel backside illuminated APS-C sensor that we already know from the X-T3. This is pre-production camera and the editing software is not compatible with X-T30 yet, but I expect the performance to be basically the same as with the X-T3. With the X-T3, I was genuinely surprised by the dynamic range and high ISO performance of this sensor. At base ISO, which is 160, you can recover a lot of data from both shadows and highlights. Going to -100 and +100 is not a problem. At higher ISOs like 3200, the dynamic range is still very good with no color shift, not even at 6400, and it still gets the colors right at ISO 12800, so that is very good performance, and with this sensor you have a lot of flexibility in post. ISO 3200 is very clean and it is definitely usable for majority of use cases. Even 6400 looks really good, the noise is visible, but the noise pattern is rather pleasant. Even 12800 could be used in low dynamic range scenes. Fujifilm uses different ISO scale though, so at given settings you will get a bit darker exposure in comparison with some other manufacturers. For example, you need to use ISO 5000 to match ISO 3200 on Sony, but even with that in mind, I am still very happy about the ISO performance. Overall, this is the best crop sensor that I've ever tested, and it is actually closer to the new full-frame sensors that I've anticipated. 26.1 megapixels is also very good resolution for all-round use. It has no low-pass filter, so the sharpness is excellent. Keep in mind that you are still getting this kind of performance in a really tiny camera body, which makes it even more impressive. Regarding the X-Trans processing and demosaicing, I have already made a video about developing X-T3 RAWs in Luminar 3, which works great. There are no artifacts that would be visible unless you zoom to 800% or something like that. In combination with great dynamic range of this sensor, you can extract incredible amount of data from the RAWs using Luminar. It also works very well with one slider accent AI editing and AI sky enhancer, so I recommend the Luminar 3 for X-Trans4 RAW editing. Both X-T3 and X-T30 have the same film simulation feature for the JPEGs. It is a very cool feature and I like it a lot. You can choose one of 10 film stocks, or if you shoot RAW, you can choose film simulation in the playback menu, which is very useful. My most favorite is probably Classic Chrome, which provides very nice vintage look with a bit of fade. I also like Velvia a lot, which is more vibrant and saturated picture style. Regarding the handling, again, it is a very small camera, so there is not a lot of room for controls, but Fujifilm has dealt with that in a very interesting way. There are still two command dials, dedicated shutter speed dial, exposure compensation dial, and dry mode dial, which is great on a camera of this size. On the other hand, there are just 3 buttons that can be set. Those are the AFL and AEL button and the function button on the top of the camera. Front and rear dial can also be pressed, so those are basically two extra buttons. As you might have noticed, there is no 4-way pad on this camera. Instead of that, you have a joystick. That might actually be a good idea. I got used to that pretty quickly, and navigating the menu this way seems to be a little bit easier. X-T30 also uses touch gestures instead of buttons, which may also be useful, but it will probably take some time to get used to that. There is almost no grip, which is again a price for the portability, so I don't consider that to be a negative. If you intend to use it with large and bright lenses, like the new 200mm f2, getting X-T30 with battery grip would be a better idea. If you intend to shoot with 16 to 55mm f2.8, I would already go with X-T30 and the battery grip. With 18 to 55mm f2.8 the 4, the handling is still okay on the X-T30. One more thing is that the 1/4 inch mount on the bottom of the X-T30 is not aligned with the lens, and you will not be able to access battery/SD card compartment with tripod plate attached. Fuji has pretty good quick menu which can be customized, so you can put anything that you might need to set on the go there, and it helps a lot. One thing that I generally don't like about Fuji controls is the focus mode selector on the front of the camera. Main menu is also well organized and the navigation is pretty fast with the joystick, and it is definitely one of the better menus out there. The display uses 3-inch 1 million dot panel. It is okay, the brightness is sufficient. It is perfectly fine for this type of camera, although it isn't anything special. It can also tilt up and down, which is again great for this size and very useful. The viewfinder uses 2.36 million dot panel with 0.62 times magnification. It is a small viewfinder, but it is fine for composing the shots, and it is nice to have any viewfinder at all in this camera. Regarding the autofocus, again, X-T30 uses the same system that we can find in the X-T3. It is 425-point phase detection autofocus system. As I have shown in the X-T3 review, it works very well. It was actually further improved with the new firmware that is already in the X-T30. It will also be available for the X-T3 in April. It is very fast and the focus acquisition is basically instant. The tracking also works well. The hit rate is actually very good, so even though this probably won't be primarily a sports camera because of the handling, it can still do very well in difficult situations. X-T3 can actually shoot a very respectable 8 frames per second with mechanical shutter, 20 frames per second with electronic shutter, and 30 frames per second with electronic shutter and 1.25 times crop. That is outstanding for this type of camera. In video, the autofocus also works well. I will test that in depth once the production version is out, but it can focus from close distance to far distance with no problems. Face tracking is very decent, there is no hunting, it is very smooth, so no complaints, but again, I will test that with the final version. Speaking about the video features, X-T3 can shoot full sensor 4K video up to 30 frames per second, and that is the real 4K DCI. It can also do that at 200 megabits per second. There is one significant limitation though, and it is the recording limit of 10 minutes in 4K and 15 minutes in Full HD. Personally, I don't shoot clips longer than that, but keep it in mind. The video quality is very good, it is very sharp. In the 4K, the amount of details is also great. F-Log is also available and it captures a lot of dynamic range, but generally I don't like to use log in combination with 8-bit. That is because sometimes 8-bit may not have enough information to recover colors from flat footage. That is why I shoot video in Eterna Film Simulation, which is a great compromise between the dynamic range and ease of post-processing. X-T3 doesn't have advanced video features like 4K 60p and 10-bit internal recording, but this little camera can actually output 10-bit 422 video over HDMI, which is again an outstanding feature in this category. It has 2.5mm microphone input jack. Of course, 3.5mm would be better, but at this size, any mic input is great. X-T3 uses the same 1260 mAh battery as the X-T3. It is rated for 380 shots or 45 minutes of video, which is on par with other cameras in this category. It can be charged through USB-C even while you are using the camera, which is great. SD card slot is placed next to the battery, which is okay on this type of camera. There is only one slot of course, which is also fine, but it is only UHS 1 compatible. I wish it was UHS 2 compatible, but it is not a big deal. As you can probably tell, I like the X-T30 a lot. It is a very compact camera with great sensor, great autofocus, and full sensor 4K DCI at a very acceptable price. Of course, there are some compromises that had to be made, like that tripod mount, 2.5mm mic input jack, small viewfinder, and so on. In my opinion, these are reasonable compromises that are justified by the size. That is why I definitely recommend X-T30 for traveling, street photography, and all-round use. For professional use, X-T3 or something similar would be more suitable. But overall, thumbs up for the X-T30. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you have found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.